Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Being Human Now show. I'm your host, Jennifer Locksmith, and today we have Guy Anderson with us. He is the author of Conspiracy Theories from Agartha to Zombies, Rise of the Clones, the Cabbage Patch Babies, and the book I want to explore with him today, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. Guy has done a massive amount of research into the undeniable fact that there is and has been for some time a parasite class who call themselves the elites that have buried our history and past advanced civilizations from us. He is sharing his findings that a global reset was forced upon the world in 1776, which sought to destroy and cover up the Tartarian Empire, which was a highly advanced spiritual civilization. One topic I want to explore on this show is our occulted history and how we can best navigate the tricky landscape the parasite class has and is currently setting up for us, as I agree with Guy that another great reset is happening now. I'll end with a quote by our guest today. There is no doubt that our history has been fabricated and nothing we were taught at school appears to be true, including physics, mathematics, and geography too. Today we are living another reset, and my hope is that my work will serve as a warning to everyone that reads it. Guy Anderson, welcome to the Being Human Now show. Thank you for your service to humanity. We need you big time right now, and you are appreciated.
Thank you. That's a really lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's true. And I just got done reading this amazing book I highly recommend. And I'm going to put an overlay of the picture because my background's messing with it. But absolutely fascinating read. Thank you so much for this work. Super important. I highly recommend everybody read it. Recommend it to your friends because, folks, it's happened before and it's happening again. And that's one of the things I definitely want to get into today because it's super important for us to be aware of the truth of our past, and what's happening right now because we are, as I said and you've said, we're in another reset right now, and they're not even hiding it. They're calling it the Great Reset. So, the lovely World Economic Forum. But before we get into all that, for anyone that may not already know your story, what got you started on this path researching occulted history, Guy?
It was my dad's fault and indirectly David Icke's fault. Um,
Ah,
and I told David that when I last saw him, that it's all his fault, really, because he started my dad. But it goes back a little bit further than that. In the 80s, my dad joined the Freemasons. He had this quest for knowledge that couldn't be found in a bookstore. And obviously there wasn't the internet then. You couldn't jump on a forum and talk about hidden history or Atlantis or anything like that. You had to go to independent bookstores and search, hunt out things. Um, the first two books he got me to read were The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, and which is what Dan Brown based his work from, and From Atlantis to the Sphinx. And once he joined the Freemasons, he started giving me little bits of information, but never quite enough. He left lots of cliffhangers. And then one day I cracked open his briefcase and I saw the apron, I saw his books, and I was fascinated. And I asked him what took place there, and he said that he couldn't tell me. And when I was old enough, he would invite me to join. But all he would tell me was that they ran the world. And when I was old enough, I joined. I had to. It turned out that it wasn't for me actually, and now I wouldn't be welcome anyway. But that was how it started, and then I started reading David Icke's work, um, and then as a tattoo artist, as I was saying before we hit record, I was obsessed with BitShoot. I had BitShoot on in the studio all the time, and I would send people down a rabbit hole. Now, initially, that was distraction because they were in pain, especially if they were with me for, say, 5 or 6 hours. They would start to get uncomfortable and fidgety. So I would put a podcast on or a video on about human cloning, um, or secret societies, the Illuminati, or what really goes on in Hollywood, selling your soul and so on. And half of them would leave wanting to know more, and the other half would leave thinking that I was absolutely insane. Um, and so yeah, so I actually found myself in a position where I was sharing more and more information with people, and I became quite well known for it. And then in 2020, when the pandemic started, and I've actually got a Facebook message from somebody that I can't name that actually said on Christmas Eve in 2019, quite a few months before the pandemic, what was going to happen in spring. So I started sharing this information and I got banned from Facebook. So immediately my customers that were booking in for tattoos with me were gone and I had to start all over again. But well, now this time I wasn't just posting about my work and trying to get people to book in. I was also posting conspiracy theories and links to videos as well. And it just escalated from there. And in 2020, early 2020, I discovered Tartaria through someone called Max Egan.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the man's a god.
Yes.
And that was it for me. For whatever reason, having become an ordained church minister, a master Freemason at the Grand Lodge of the United Kingdom, the headquarters for Freemasonry,
Oh my
and been
goodness.
down all the rabbit holes and read all of David Icke's work and Einstein and Stephen Hawking. Tartaria, for whatever reason at the time, it resonated with me. I didn't understand why, but it became an obsession, and it still is now 6 years on. I wake up thinking about it. I go to sleep thinking about it.
Yeah. I wonder if you had a past life there. You had to have. Yeah. It's like, all right,
I,
it's
I
time. It's
I
time.
wasn't really kind of on board with this past life regression, but quite a successful author called Elizabeth Hancock that's written about the Anunnaki.
Mm.
Um, she she contacted me and said, I do past life regression, and I don't know if you're interested. I already knew her because I'd been on her channel a few times, and I said to her, okay, I'm on the fence with this,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's book it in. And she doesn't live very far away from me, so we arranged it.
Hmm.
And 2 hours later, I realized why this resonated with me.
Wow. Oh, that's so awesome. Awesome. Um, well, I have to ask you a question just popped in my head about, you were involved with Freemasonry, and one of the things that you touch on in the book is how a lot of the Tartarian buildings, well, not a lot of them, but some are still standing, and they're all over the world. We know that every town has a Freemason building. So, a question popped in my head, are a lot of the Freemason buildings old Tartarian buildings? Or
All of them.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Most old bill. So if it's an insurance company, a bank, any government building, or a
Hmm.
large home owned by someone who's connected to
Okay.
the parasites,
Okay.
then they will be Tartarian buildings repurposed. Yeah, so
Okay.
any old world building, and you can typically tell by the style. They've got that Greco-Roman look, normally made from red brick,
Yeah.
with white detailing, white stone and red brick. Normally that's the telltale sign, and they're a lot older than we've been led to believe.
Yeah. And you've said that red brick is actually a conductor and was used as part of the old technology, correct?
Yeah, it's the same
Yeah.
chemical process that creates rust.
Hmm.
So it's not
Yeah.
a sort of conspiracy theory, it's science that
Yeah.
red brick, the old red brick used through oxidization can
Hmm.
actually store energy. You can actually hold power within it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So cool.
So these were
Um,
large batteries. These old buildings were literally like large power stations, large batteries. They were alive. They were actually
yeah.
vibrating with a particular frequency and fully
Yeah.
charged.
Yeah. The frequency of all things, correct? It's very,
432 hertz. Yeah.
gosh, we've lost so much, but it's okay. We're gonna get back there. I'm confident we're gonna get back there. But you've collected your occulted book collection, you've said, is just growing and growing. Just for fun, how many would you say you have? Just spitballing, how
Oh
many would you say?
God. I don't know that you can't see them, but they're
Yeah,
behind me. I,
hundreds.
I really don't know. Sort of two,
Yeah.
300.
Oh, so
Some of
fun.
them are very, very rare. I've got books that were supposed to be included in what were burnt in the
Oh
book
yeah.
burning that's
Mm-hmm.
taken place.
Yeah.
I've got Bibles. I've got one particular Bible that's 500 years old.
Wow.
Obviously, it's completely different to the one that the King James that we see now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the yeah, some occulted Bibles as well, and the um, yeah, lots on mythology and so on. Yeah, so quite a lot of old books covering
Awesome.
everything. Atlases and encyclopedias are really useful as well, providing they're pre-1800.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're rare, but you can still find them. eBay's a good place because
Mm.
a lot of people put things on eBay and they don't really know what they're selling. So rather than it ending up, in a secondhand bookshop for 500 or £1,000 or dollars, you'll find somebody that's inherited a box of books that they don't want, and
Yeah.
and you can get some real bargains. So yeah, I've got
Yeah.
credible amount. I'm just looking around. They're all around me actually. I've got some
Yeah.
on the floor. Here's one I'm reading at the moment, which isn't that old.
Oh
Don't know
no.
how well you can
Here you
see.
gotta twist. I know it's so tricky. Oh,
Oh
come
yeah, that's
on.
weird, isn't it?
Isn't it weird? Oh, the needle. Wait, is that a building? What building
No, I
is
can't.
that?
Yeah, I don't know
Is
why
it
it won't.
towers?
Towers.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't know.
Uh,
Yeah, you can't really see it, unfortunately. So yeah, that's about towers, and the other one I'm reading at the moment is the Victorian Vision, which is how they perceived the future was going to be, and that's fascinating too.
oh my
So yeah, so
goodness.
some books are new, but the majority of them are very old.
Awesome. And this is where you pulled a lot of your information for the book
Mm.
and for so that's awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Um, well, I want to dive into Tartaria and have you teach us about that. I've got some questions, but my first question is, what year is it really right now?
1226.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
1226. Okay, so Tartaria existed. It was a real place. As we've said, you found it in a lot of books. You found a lot of books that talk about
Mm.
it. Um, so tell us about Tartaria. The history has been erased up until 1776, right? It's been
Yeah.
falsified.
Yeah, so
Um,
anybody can find it. If you literally go into a search engine, images,
mhm,
and start typing in maps of the world, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, you'll see Tartaria there. And some maps are better than others. Some will show you that it's a barren wasteland, and others will actually show you the buildings. Um, and there is a bit of confusion because they've kind of tried to suggest that the Tartarians, which they changed their name to the Mongolians,
mhm.
the parasites did this, the Jesuits did this. They got the cartographers to change it to the Mongolian Empire, and the palaces and castles were all removed and replaced with images of tents, and that was lost through translation
Mhm.
because Shatyr is the Russian name for palace, but it's all and but sorry, beg your pardon. Chateau is the French name for a palace or a castle, but
Yeah.
châtier is the Russian name for a tent.
Oh my
So
gosh.
when the one of the first French cartographers went to explore Tartaria to help with actually putting the maps together and describing towns and cities and areas of land, there was lost in translation the word chateau. So instead of there being images of castles and palaces, they were tents instead.
Oh.
And so it was quite
No.
cleverly done,
Yeah. Oh
lost in
my
translation
goodness.
intentionally.
Yeah.
So yeah, so most people would know Tartaria as the Mongolian Empire. It's Eurasia,
Hmm.
Russia, Eurasia, going
Hmm.
into Western Europe, most of Eastern Europe. But yeah, Russia was incredibly advanced, far more advanced than we are today.
Yeah.
But that all needed to be removed. And perhaps one of the biggest rulers of the Tartarian Empire would have been Genghis Khan,
Yeah.
who was an incredible person, complete reverse of what we're taught. He did some incredibly good things, and he was no warmonger at all.
Yeah.
All of that's fabrication.
Yeah. Could you tell us some, like one or two facts about him that we might not know? Because I didn't know this. I didn't know that he was actually a
Yeah,
good, well, of course, they lied in the history, so.
yeah. So yeah, and you can typically do that with most figures throughout history. If they're painted as being some kind of savior, then the chances are they weren't, and if they're painted as being a bad guy, then that's unlikely to be the case. They invert a lot. Genghis Khan, he was the first person to um, to actually allow the worship of any religion without fear of persecution. Any religion. He was the person that introduced Christianity
Oh, wow. Okay.
to what became the
Mhm.
Mongolian Empire and what is today Russia, Eastern Europe, half of Western Europe, and Asia. He
Mhm.
was the person that did that. He introduced the passport. Now, the
Okay.
passport was different then. The passport guaranteed safe passage. So
Okay.
Europeans wishing to travel into Tartaria and visit and explore were
Mhm.
given a passport that basically offered the protection of Genghis Khan. So
Yeah.
if anybody was to, you know, try and rob them or harm them in any way, they were
Mhm.
answerable to Genghis Khan. Anyone traveling to Tartaria was given safe passage by Genghis Khan.
Oh,
And of course, there
cool.
were also connections between Genghis Khan and Jesus.
Okay. Wow. And is that in, I don't know, that wasn't in this book, is it? Or is it another one of
No,
your
it's
books?
something
Okay.
I'm still researching.
Oh, okay,
It's a
cool.
biggie, and and
Yeah.
and it's a difficult subject to bring up because even people that we consider to be red-pilled or wide awake,
Hmm.
um, a lot of people that claim to be aren't fully awake. So when
Hmm.
you hit them with information about Genghis Khan and Jesus, it can sometimes hit a wall.
Yeah.
They can't take it in. So it's something that I'm happy to share with you, but it's a topic I'm still researching, and it's very difficult to find information on it. But it does require an open mind. So it requires an audience of people that are fully awake, not
Yeah.
just people that claim to be.
Yeah.
And if someone's just woken up, it's probably a bit too much to take on. But
Okay.
ultimately, there are researchers out there far more intelligent than me that have researched this in great depth,
Hmm.
that believe that he was the son of Jesus.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he had children, and yeah, the story of him that we've been given is not true. Obviously, I think a lot of people know that, but it's been, yeah, he had
Yeah.
kids, and it was,
Yeah, they didn't
yeah,
even get the name right, did they? I mean,
yeah,
his name's
yeah,
Yeshua. Yeah.
yeah.
And obviously it's been twisted. They didn't have a J, did they? So it was Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously a lot of people believe me is actually representing Zeus.
Hmm.
But his name was Yeshua.
Yeah.
Yeshua is the name of Genghis Khan's father. And when you
Wow.
remove the 800 years that have been added to our timeline, the
Yeah.
period that Jesus was in Tibet is exactly the same time that Genghis Khan was conceived. And
Goodness.
in Crimea, or Ukraine as we call it today, it was Crimean Tartary before. There's a burial mound, been there hundreds of years, and on a specific date every year, people go there to place a wooden crucifix in the soil.
Wow.
Now, half of the people are doing it because they believe it's where Jesus is buried.
Okay.
The other half are going there to respect Genghis Khan's father.
Wow. Wow, this is big. I'm excited for this
Yeah.
book. You're working on it right now?
I am,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. But and the interesting thing is that I call it the Tartarian Empire,
Hmm.
or the Tartarian era. The actual correct term is Grand Tartary or Grand
Okay.
Tartaria. That is the
Okay.
1,000 years that Tartaria ran for. That is also known as the millennial reign of Christ.
Okay.
A
Okay.
1,000 years of things being built with balance, harmony,
Mhm.
they say by the angels and by the saints. And it's not the case, and the millennial reign of Christ means something completely different. But there are biblical connections to the Tartarian period. That's when these cathedrals were constructed.
Yes.
They weren't places
Yes.
of worship; they were healing centers. But nevertheless, there are direct links to Jesus Christ and the millennial reign and
Yeah.
Tartaria.
Oh, so cool. So you're continuing with this work. This is an ongoing thing. That's great.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
found
Thank you.
something recently that I found the impossible, something that I'd spent over 5 years looking for. I never thought I would actually find a document written by someone from Tartaria that explained the language and the buildings and how they worked. I didn't think it existed, and I traced it. I traced someone and managed to get hold of a document, the memoirs of a Tartarian architect.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
like
I'm publishing it later this year.
that's a divine gift. You were like you're on your mission and you're being handed stuff. That's amazing. Congratulations with that.
I know it sounds a bit weird, but I did this yesterday. I did it again today. I talk to the source.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it does, sometimes I complain to it, sometimes I actually swear at it and get really
Yeah.
frustrated. But when it gives me what I want, it knows that I'm grateful and I do thank it. I don't know what I'm talking to. I think that, you know, God, some people would say God,
Yeah.
but I'm actually talking to ultimately the pre-existent one.
Yeah.
That's the correct name for God, the pre-existing existent one. It's the source, it's just a source of energy that
Yeah.
governs control. I'm talking to that, and I'm just saying thank you, you know.
Yeah.
But it does get a beating from me now and again as
It's
well.
okay. Well, it understands, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It knows that I'm trying to do the right thing and that I get
yeah.
frustrated, and you know, I try and be a good person, and I think that it knows that, and I'm one of the few people that I do random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Normally with homeless people, I've raised a lot of money for homeless people, a lot of money, thousands of pounds for people with mental health, and I've done it without ever putting it on social media, without sharing it with anyone. So,
Yeah.
and I'd give anyone my last penny, and I do it without actually then telling someone what I've just done or posting, look, this is me in a tent with some homeless people feeding them. I don't do anything like that. I do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of recognized sometimes by whatever is out there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's how we're really supposed to be doing it, because otherwise you're doing it for your ego. You're not really doing it out of
Yeah,
kindness. And
I had
so,
mine beaten out of me a long time ago.
yeah, but that's wonderful. Thank you for that. So the Tartarians, well, they live kind of the way you just described. They try to live in sync with what they called, or you referred to as the Almighty Creator of all, and they live lives that they try to live enlightened, long lives.
Hmm.
And you have found evidence that they did just that. Their architecture, would you explain? Their architecture is all over the world, and there are
Yes.
buildings that look identical to each other all over the world.
Hmm.
And I believe was it Rockefeller that removed the mechanisms for the way that these buildings work, the way they generated ether, which the parasites have also removed from our textbooks. They don't want us knowing about ether. So would you just describe like what ether is? And then I believe the technology you refer to is called cymatics, right?
There's a few things in amongst that.
Okay.
Um, so so harnessing energy from the ether, it's telluric energy.
Hmm.
And if you think about imagine if you made a huge compass. You went outside and you
Hmm.
made a giant compass on a lawn somewhere in a field, in the middle of a field. And let's say, for example, the needle of the compass weighed kilos, hundreds of kilos. As long as it's the correct material that we're working with, that is going to move on its own to point north. No matter what you do, it will point north. That's energy. That's showing you the magnetism that this Earth, this realm has. So we're sat literally on geomagnetic plates. Um, Now this is, if for want of a better expression, it's kind of like the Earth is an electrical circuit board. Now, originally people would have referred to these as ley lines. So when you build a building, when you construct a building where two ley lines meet, then that is literally like putting a drop of solder onto two electrical wires to create a circuit. That building becomes charged and it then receives energy in different ways. It receives it through the ley lines, which carry energy, telluric energy. And it also, the buildings can also receive energy from lightning and from the atmosphere, atmospheric pressure too.
Hmm.
An example of everything being kind of electric to an extent, and us ourselves even being batteries, is when you can give somebody an electric shock. You might have done it before. You might have touched someone and give them a static shock. Everything's kind of electric. We're considered by the parasites to be batteries, and that's referred to in the judicial system. We're charged and placed in a cell. So there's lots of symbology out there, lots of symbolism to remind us indirectly that everything is about energy and ultimately electricity. It happens when you vote. You go to a polling station, you put someone in power. So everything is about energy and electricity ultimately. So you build providing you're working with what they call the golden ratio, which is what they use to, that it's the template of building, whether you're building a city, a pyramid, or you're building a cathedral, they all operate on the same principle, which is the golden ratio. Um, so you construct this cathedral, which is a cathode row, where two ley lines meet, and therefore the energy is much greater there. Up inside the roof of these buildings, you have basically a very small kind of power station going on. You have a cathode row. So you have a cathode that receives the energy from the electromagnetic atmosphere. That's then stored in red mercury tanks. The tanks are copper, and the energy is harnessed within those and then distributed through towns and cities using what became telegraph wires. So they
Mhm.
were actually transmitting this energy and passing it on to other buildings. You had some buildings that had these onion domes on the roof. They looked like onions. They were
Yeah.
originally copper. They were singing bowls. They worked with the atmosphere as well, and they
Mhm.
could actually change the frequency of the environment, so they could almost control the weather in a localized area. The more bowls that you had on these buildings,
Mhm.
the bigger the area you could control the atmosphere. So they weren't just harnessing energy from the ether, telluric energy. They were also working with the weather to control and
Oh.
manipulate the weather in an area.
Mhm.
So you've got this building. If we just talk about cathedrals for a moment, you've got this building built on two where two ley lines meet. It's pulling in energy, telluric energy from the ley lines, the electric circuit board, if you like, but it's also pulling in energy from the atmosphere. And they will also have typically lightning conductors on the roof. The
Yeah.
backstory is to protect the building from a lightning strike. But how many buildings are we aware of that get hit by lightning, yet they all have them? They were actually receiving energy through lightning. And a good example of that is if anybody's watched Back to the Future, where they have to get the DeLorean back up and running so Marty McFly can go back to the future. They wait for a lightning strike to hit the old town hall. It then provides enough energy to fire up the flux capacitor, and away he goes. And incidentally, the building, the town hall, is a Tartarian building in that film. So it's always in plain sight. So cathedrals were centers of energy, but people didn't go there to charge their iPad or so to speak.
Yeah.
They actually went there to use the energy to heal. And that's when you've got a building that contains energy, a high level of energy, and it's been constructed following the golden ratio, then you have something called cymatics. You have a frequency of 432 hertz bouncing around inside this building, and then they would play music using a pipe organ. Obviously, the organ's designed to work with your internal organs, and that would balance you. So it was kind of like going to a well-being center for the
Mhm.
day, and people would meditate in there and balance their chakras, so to speak.
Mhm.
And yes, they use cymatics as well. So it was all to do with frequency. Um, and incidentally, you will always see these round windows on cathedrals, these large round windows, typically stained glass, that each one in each cathedral in the world is completely different, and they
Mhm.
are all the result of seeing what molecules of water do when subjected to different frequencies under a microscope. But of course, these cathedrals were built, if we follow the narrative, before the microscope existed, which
Mhm.
suggests that whoever did build them had a far clearer understanding of science and physics than we've been led to believe. But there were also buildings as well, red and brick buildings, red brick that was storing energy with white detailing. A red and white brick a building denotes a battery. So that actually is a power station. So all of these buildings were actually storing energy within the very foundations and the very fiber of the building. They were all harnessing and storing energy.
Awesome, awesome. And I think you said that some of the windows were actually made from crystal during that time.
Yes, they were originally crystal. Yeah,
Yeah.
and each color represented a chakra,
Wow.
and they were obviously replaced. The church bells were replaced. The idea with the church bell was that that would control the atmosphere in the area, so they could avoid, bad poor weather. They could actually change poor weather. And the singing bowls, these onion domes on the buildings, they actually worked to an extent where people could actually, in certain cities where they had them still working into the 1900s, they would avoid outbreaks. So when the cholera outbreak hit, people that still had the singing bowls working correctly didn't actually have that pandemic reach them.
Hmm.
So these were controlling the atmosphere locally as well.
Yeah.
So they were modifying the weather, but in a positive way, not like they're doing right now. But yeah, so they were able to using frequency and vibration for
Hmm.
basically frequency and vibration was used to not only heal people but also to ensure people's well-being and control the atmosphere locally.
Yeah. You said they believed the happier and the healthier their population was, the stronger their civilization was, which is kind of the
Yes,
opposite of what's happening today. Um, so so you've said that these people were giants.
some
They
of
were,
them,
yeah,
yeah,
some of them. Okay. Um, that they could get up to 12 feet tall, but some, for the most part, they were like 10 feet tall, which would explain why the windows are so high in some of these older buildings. Um,
yeah. Yeah, and
yeah.
it varied. It varied depending on where they were. So you had some that were sort of our size. There
Okay.
was a higher level of oxygen in the environment. The
Okay.
atmosphere had a far higher level of oxygen. So we had giant trees, huge produce as well. We were growing vegetables and fruit on a much bigger scale than we are now. And I don't mean as in volume, but actually literally the size of what they were growing. And that's why we see these huge trees. A lot of them are now sort of ruled out as being, or dismissed, sorry, as being a very old volcanic um, remain, if you like, or an anomaly or a rock formation. These were actually giant trees, and so with a high level of oxygen, everything was able to grow slightly bigger. But the Tartarian people varied. They came in all shapes and sizes, but they accommodated for that. So you would typically have the average person during that time was about 7 feet, 7.5 feet tall. But obviously,
Okay.
to get an average of that, you had people that were significantly taller too.
Yeah, and one thing that's cool, I think you mentioned that their style was like steampunk. And I know a lot of people nowadays they
Yes.
love the steampunk thing. So that was really cool. Thanks for including that. That was cool. And a lot of them wore hats. Um,
And they were copper. The reason they
Copper
wore the
hats?
hats is because they had a ring of copper, and the women would wear copper with headdresses with copper
Oh
in
my
copper earrings,
goodness.
copper bangles. They were actually controlling their own frequency.
Oh
They were
wow, that's so
balanced.
cool.
Yeah.
And you've said, and I think it's important for people to know, one of the ways that, these buildings have been messed with is a lot of them were like copper domed, but they literally went out of their way to tell people what the parasites did to the copper on top of these
Yeah.
buildings.
Well, some of them were just replaced. They
Yeah,
would take the copper roof down, the copper
yeah,
dome down, and just replace it with slate or tile. But what they did with certain buildings that they wanted to keep was they actually used horse urine. So they would coat them in horse urine, which speeded up the process. So
yeah,
they went green faster. They tarnished quicker, and once they're tarnished, they no longer work. They have to stay copper.
wow,
Otherwise, they don't actually work. So by doing that, they all went green. So you imagine what the Statue of Liberty looked like before they coated it in horse urine. Well, I
yeah,
say Statue of Liberty, it's Statue of Helios, but you imagine what that looked like. This
yeah.
bright copper structure must have looked
This,
incredible.
yeah, yeah. So that was an original from Great, what did you say it was supposed to be called? Great Tartaria or Great?
What? Sorry, the
So
Statue of
that
Liberty.
the Statue of Liberty was from that time.
Yeah, the Statue
Yes,
of Liberty
okay.
is hundreds of years old. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
okay.
it's the statue of it's Helios,
Okay.
or some people call it Apollo,
Yeah.
and it was basically a power station. It was pulling energy from the ether and powering, yeah,
Goodness.
powering that area.
Yeah.
Um, and what they did was they bastardized it. It was handed to the Freemasons, and the
Hmm.
cornerstone was laid, and that was laid by the Grand Master of the Lodge of New York.
Hmm.
The myth about it coming from uh, France is easily squashed because France was bankrupt at the time that statue was made.
Hmm.
They had
Oh
no
my
money
goodness.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
They couldn't afford to do it. And if you look at when it was actually assembled,
Hmm.
there's no records of any workforce. There's no records of any material. Incidentally, there are also no records of any hospital admission in connection with its construction, which is impossible. You couldn't build something like that with our technology or the technology they had then, without somebody dying or being seriously injured. And that's another way to look into these old buildings and monuments. How many hospital admissions were there connected to the construction? And there are none.
Yeah,
None at
that's a
all.
good
They'll
point.
tell you the name of the architect, no name of the builders, no mention of where the builders came from, no mention of where they stayed or where the materials are from. And the Statue of Liberty is stood on an 11-pointed star fort. It's all to do with pulling energy. And that was
Yeah.
basically paying homage to Helios, saying thank you to the Aether
Oh
for
wow.
providing energy. And in France, they actually tried to make one. In Paris, they actually tried to make a second one, and they couldn't do it.
There you
Yet
go.
they supposedly made that one and shipped it to New York while they were in debt for millions and millions of francs and completely bankrupt. But they had the money and the time to build the Statue of Liberty and gift it to America. You know, the whole
Right.
backstory is a bit,
Oh my
you know.
gosh. So you said some of the examples, that's one example, just to name a few for people that they might be hearing this for the first time. Some examples of these buildings are, and that a lot of the parasites are squatting in them. They're living in them, they're using them as
Mm,
government buildings. A lot of the star forts are, you said, are being used as military bases. Like the White House is an example of a Tartarian building. Buckingham Palace,
yes. Mm,
um, the Vatican, correct? Yeah,
yes.
so.
And you see those buildings, they're very similar.
Mhm.
So if you look at the layout now, when you look at the layout of, for example, Washington D.C., they'll tell you that a man called Pierre, I think it was Pierre L'Enfant, a high-ranking Freemason, designed the layout for Washington. He didn't. The layout for Washington follows the golden ratio, the same as all Tartarian cities throughout Russia in particular. There are most of the cities, St. Petersburg, Tomsk, Moscow, they all follow the same pattern, and that is putting buildings in a line that they actually all align,
Mhm.
forming equilateral triangles. You can draw on a map all of the old world buildings, connect them together, and you'll see how perfectly balanced and symmetrical they are.
Yeah.
And that is because they're following ley lines.
Yeah.
They're built on the circuit board, and so together they complete a circuit board for a city. So everything within that city is balanced and harmonized. It's all pulling energy from the ether. Everyone within that area is feeling euphoric to an extent. They're positive. They had no illness. There's no anxiety and no anger either.
Mhm.
But also, it enabled them to stabilize the environment, and therefore they could grow.
Yeah.
They could
Yeah.
grow whatever they wanted, and
Yeah.
it would grow, and they avoided outbreaks, pandemics. Yeah,
And this energy was free and clean, available
yeah,
to all. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and one cool thing you mentioned in the book, their flag, the Tartarian flag had a griffin on it.
Hmm.
And they knew that griffins were real, mermaids were real, centaurs were real, unicorns were real. And one of your past podcasts, I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, you told a fascinating story that literally had me squealing. I thought it was so interesting that not only were unicorns real, but a certain, I believe, queen you mentioned used their horns for. Would you mind telling people that fascinating story? So I think that's so
Yeah.
cool.
They've always been considered to be sacred, and that killing
Mhm.
a unicorn is something. It's a bit like killing a dolphin. There are certain things you're not supposed to do if you want to ascend when you pass on.
Yeah.
And unicorns are one of those. Their blood is considered to be sacred and magical. But what they used to do is Queen Elizabeth the First, she would buy unicorn horn ground down, and she would take a small amount of it and sprinkle it on her food, and it would change color if there was a toxin in the food. So she was doing it to see whether or not she was being poisoned. And people in power were doing that at the time. And they were
Yeah.
hunted to extinction. They were eating them. And they were hunted to pretty much to extinction, like they've done with lots of other animals. And that's why you see the unicorn. It's present in lots of crests still, especially here in Britain. You'll see it with the lion on one side and the unicorn in chains on the
Huh.
other. They've caught this incredible animal.
Yeah.
Now, some people will say, well, it's a mythological beast. It never really existed. The unicorn is mentioned throughout lots of different cultures over thousands of years that never communicated with each other. A little bit like mer beings, whether we're talking about mermaids, for example. Um, this is a shared story that repeats almost identical descriptions of these creatures by cultures that never met. And when
Mm-hmm.
you see that happening time and time again, it's a little bit like the story of the deluge or the Great Flood, which wiped out Atlantis. That same story appears throughout every culture in the world before they had the ability, in theory, to communicate with each other. So when
Yeah.
you see something repeating itself through
Yeah.
lots of different cultures, lots of different civilizations over hundreds of years, then you can't just shrug it off and say, well, it's mythology. And the more you look into it, the more mythology becomes more factual and more believable than, for example, the story of the dinosaurs, which I think is complete fabrication.
Yeah.
But the griffin was very important. The Tartarians worshipped the griffin because or idolized the griffin because griffins mated for life. And if the mate died, then the remaining griffin would remain alone. It would never actually mate with or pair with another griffin. And that's why the Roman Catholic Church, who were the Edomites originally, ironically, the only group of people that God despised, morphed into the Roman Catholic Church. They
Yeah.
took over the griffin because it represented unity, or in other words, it symbolized their belief on divorce. You mate
Mm-hmm.
for life. And that's why they took the griffin on as their own, because they said it was all of a sudden the griffin for them represented marriage being forever,
Yeah.
and divorce being taboo. And that's what the griffin represented. Well, the Tartarians felt the same way, but
Yeah.
it was hijacked by the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you've heard this. I can't confirm, but I've seen it coming across my screen. Have you heard recently that it's come out? I don't know if it was in the Epstein files or what, that a delicacy of the elites is mermaid.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen
What do
that
you
a
think of
few
that?
times
Do you
over.
think that's just mumbo jumbo, or do you think there's something to it? There's no way to know. I don't know.
It's difficult to know because I don't think we're not supposed to eat meat.
Okay.
They know that. It's in the Bible.
Okay.
When fair enough, it's in the Old Testament, but and it's also shared in Sumerian texts too, which predate everything. The Old Testament really is Sumerian text.
Hmm.
Um, Badly translated, and they say to Adamu, or Adam as he is in the New Test sorry, the Old Testament, that you can eat from the plants, you can eat from the trees and the bushes, but you're not to eat the flesh of other animals. Only the beasts do that. You're not
Okay.
supposed to do that.
Okay.
But somewhere along the line we started eating meat.
Yeah.
Some people would say that there's an argument for eating fish,
Hmm.
and there is a train of
Uh,
thought that perhaps it's because it doesn't have a face as we recognize a face
mm,
to be,
hmm.
but we're not supposed to eat meat. And don't get me wrong, I do. I do occasionally have chicken or steak. Oh my God, I make sure I found out where it came from. I'd never
Yes.
get it from a supermarket or whatever. I
Yeah.
want to know that how it was raised, what it was raised on, and
Hmm.
how it was killed.
Yeah.
If you're going to kill something, another living sentient being, if you're going to kill another creature, then
Hmm.
I think it has to be done humanely and with some respect.
Yeah.
Um, but I desperately need to become vegetarian. But I do struggle. I've got to admit, I do struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um,
Oh, sorry,
let's,
to answer your question, I don't know if
yeah.
they know this information.
Hmm.
From the research I did into the Rothschilds through a former chef,
Hmm.
head chef in Europe, he said that they ate bitter leafy greens. They didn't eat meat at all. Black
Okay.
coffee and bitter leafy greens. That was pretty much their diet. That
Wow.
he never saw them eat meat.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. So, so what happened to Tartaria? Because I kind of want to get into it in the remaining time. What happened to Tartaria is happening to us as we speak. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
it's they had a reset and
And
they wiped them out.
And it's like you said, that they're not even hiding this one. I mean, how many
Mm,
times have we heard people on the World Economic Forum stage say, Great Reset, Great Reset, we're going through a Great Reset. I mean, even Bush was talking about it. Bush Senior was talking about the
yeah.
need for a Great Reset. So what
Yeah.
what what appears
New
to
World
happen?
Order. Yeah.
Yeah, well, New World Order kicked off in 1776. You've got it on the back of your dollar bill.
Yeah.
New World Order in Latin, 1776 in Roman numerals. Then you've got the Statue of Liberty with the M out of alignment because that was added. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So a great reset is when they wipe out most of the population. They keep a small number of people to keep an infrastructure maintained,
Yeah.
but they typically keep the children. And so
Yeah.
leading up to a pandemic, sorry, leading up to a reset pandemic,
Well.
they're always involved,
Yeah.
part and parcel. You'll start to see an increase in people talking about orphans and child trafficking,
Hmm.
children being seized by the state, um, children disappearing, and so on. The children are what they need to reboot because they come with a clean sheet. They don't have an issue with the government. They haven't been down the rabbit holes researching things, and they also haven't experienced years and years and years of being poisoned through food, various medications, the water supply, and so on. So you've kind of got a new civilization that's untarnished,
Yeah.
ready to go. They bolster them up with clones,
Hmm.
but essentially they get rid of most of the adults. So the last Great Reset that started off with lots of wars, civil wars.
Hmm.
They had pandemics, outbreaks. They had famine, where they cut food supplies. They poisoned water supplies as well. But ultimately, they got the majority of men to fight themselves through civil war. So the Napoleonic War would be a good example of that, where people wearing the same uniform were fighting each other. They
Hmm.
lost between 1776 and 1876, 3.35 billion people were killed through
Wow.
various acts of genocide, forced pandemics and famines, and through civil war.
Hmm.
We lost 3.35 billion people. Three-quarters of the population of the Earth were gone, leaving a few adults and a couple of million kids.
Yeah. And you were saying how a lot of the remaining people that remembered the old world were put in, well, the old world Tartarian buildings that we became known as like mental asylums.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
they executed quite a few of them,
Yeah.
and that was still going on in Russia into the 1900s. There was a period called Red Terror where they were
Hmm.
going into people's houses looking for any evidence of Tartarian blueprints, documents, journals, books, anything at all connected to the old world. They were seizing it and taking the people away to prison, but they would always die during the journey, and
Yeah.
that's where I got the information from.
Yeah.
It's someone who was taken, and his grandson then passed it on to somebody in Canada, and it ended up with me because they fled. So yeah, they will they'll literally get rid of people by staging war.
Hmm.
They'll then have a few outbreaks here and there. Now, then they introduced something called the Lunacy Act. And what the Lunacy Act meant was if you were a mum and you had some children and your husband had died in battle, you could be committed to an asylum for the rest of your life because you were not seen as being able to raise the children on your own. And being a widow was a classification for being committed to an asylum. It was one of the reasons. Then they targeted women in other ways, having monthly problems, reading too much, being overly religious, lots
Yeah.
of different reasons, falling off a horse, anything they could think of could get you locked away for life. And of course, your husband's died, you've now been sent to an asylum, your children become
Yeah.
property of the state.
Yeah.
And that is what they were doing. So again, lots of people locked up, killed, locked up, and men who fought, who returned from the war and started to question things, why the buildings have changed, what's happened here, what where's the free energy got? Why aren't we talking about this? What have you done to that building? It's now a church, and what's going on? It wasn't before. Who's this person in charge? What's happened to the royal family? These people have changed. They're different. Anyone that was questioning anything was either committed or sent to prison. So in the late, well, between sort of like the early 1800s and the late 1800s, we had prisons, asylums, and orphanages open all over the world, in every major town and city all over the world at exactly the same time. And in places as remote as Tasmania, overnight, 7,000 people are sent to prison. A
Yeah.
newly opened prison, 7,000 people in there within the first year of it opening. And this happened everywhere. They locked up the survivors.
Hmm. And then we've also got, and we're seeing this today. I want to talk a little about what's happening today. Fires, which actually are kind of
Mm.
reminiscent of direct energy weapons that we're seeing today. They seem to be using that back then. Yeah, there definitely seems to be some sort of, like I've said, they keep the elites keep using, or the parasitic class. They're not very creative. They seem to have a playbook that they've been using over and over again, where only the details change, and they're using it again on us. So we've got these fires, these unnatural floods, which was also happening back then. They were using that against the people and also to cover up the civilization. Yeah, we've got what happened in Maui. We've got what happened in North Carolina. I think there's flooding happening in Europe right now, or recently. Fires, and they would set fire in a lot of these old buildings to get rid of the books, to get rid of the evidence. Um, yeah, I mean, and right now I think you've said there's supposedly a meningitis pandemic happening right now in the UK, or
Yeah.
they're talking about it
It's a
on the
good one, isn't
news.
it? It's brilliant. It's
Brilliant.
very, very clever. What they're
Yeah.
going to do with this one is they start off with a story about it happening in a particular area of England. It's in the southeast. The county's called Kent, and there's a quite a well-respected university there, the University of Canterbury. They've traced it to a nightclub. You'd never be able to do that. They've traced it to a nightclub and said that there are people in there that had meningitis, or one person that's passed it on. And meningitis is passed on by the exchange of bodily fluid. It can be through sneezing in someone's face or sharing a drink, but the fluid does need to exchange. Now, what they're saying at the moment is, obviously, initially they want to vaccinate everybody that was in the nightclub or connected to to the area or the university. So they vaccinate them, and we all kind of know what the real purpose of vaccines are.
Yeah.
They're wearing face masks now around there, but
No.
the timing was crucial because all of the students will go home for Easter. Now, the moment they
Mm.
leave Kent and travel across the UK, they're going to take the virus with them.
Hmm.
So it will go from being a problem that exists only in a small area of the UK to,
Hmm.
because it's Easter, these children are going to travel
Yeah.
home all over the
Yeah.
UK, England, Scotland, and Wales, and they're going to Northern Ireland, and they're going to take the pandemic with they're going to take meningitis with them. They'll then
Hmm.
say, well, it's spread because of the children returning for the
Yeah.
holidays. So it's very clever,
Yeah.
and people are rolling up their sleeves once again. They don't want to die from meningitis, but
Yeah.
meningitis shows similar effects to radiation
Mm,
poisoning.
yeah.
So I think what's happened there is they've cranked up the 5G masts.
Yeah.
People are displaying similar symptoms to meningitis. They go and get a vaccine. We know what's in the vaccine.
Yeah.
They then go home, pass it on to their family and so on, and then everybody is unwell.
Yeah.
But what they'll then do is they'll crank. But that's the narrative. But what they'll
Right.
do is crank the 5G masts up nationally,
Hmm.
so everyone goes out to get the vaccine.
Yeah, and that's one thing I want to touch on is, the Depop agenda, and I'm sorry to say, like I don't think these COVID jabs are a good thing. I think we're all starting to
Oh
realize, and a
no,
lot of
yeah.
us knew, right? Um, and we've got baby mama of Elon Musk, Grimes, talking about how, AI is taking over the jobs, but it's okay because we're about to have a massive depopulation event, and so it's okay that AI is taking over. So I kind of wish that guy had asked her a few more questions when she said that, but yeah, and I'm concerned, a lot of people got the COVID jab because it was mandated by their work. Why did they want to keep their work? Because they have families children to support. So I'm thinking, my goodness, a lot of people got these COVID jabs. If it is a Depop agenda, we may wind up with a lot of orphans again, all over again, when their
Well, they're now
parents
trying to
pass.
vaccinate kids
Yeah.
too. I mean, there's big push here.
Yep.
I don't know if you've got it there, but
Yes.
it's on the
Yeah.
news, on the radio, constantly, all day. Get your children vaccinated. Get your children get vaccinated if you're pregnant.
Ooh, yeah.
And we
Yeah.
know what's in those vaccines. I mean, two-thirds of them was saline solution, but the third that weren't, they're injecting HIV into people.
Yes. Yeah, HIV. And I think the tech that you're talking about with the 5G towers is synced up with that too.
Yeah,
So they
yeah,
can
through the metals,
control.
the nano, yeah, we've got nanotechnology going on there, and it syncs with. So by if you've had the winter flu jab or the COVID jab that had the nasties in it, and
Hmm.
they turn the 5G mast up in your area, you are going to display symptoms similar to, a respiratory disorder.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then I don't know, we know that they only want to have the elites travel in the future, and now they're doing the whole making it a big problem to travel now.
The
And they
fake war in
just
Iran, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and that's another thing I just want to ask. I know we're winding down here. What are your thoughts on the recent war games going on in the Middle East? Do you think that's just
Okay.
more of the same, going after Tartarian technology and
No, no,
no?
that's yeah. So I'm guessing most people that are going to watch this know that Trump's a puppet. He's not
Yes.
the president of anything.
Yeah.
He is completely owned by Israel. Israel bailed him out when he went. Well, every time he's gone bust, it's the money's been filtered through Israel, but it's ultimately the Rothschilds that pull his strings. He is Nathaniel or Nathan, as he calls himself now. Nathan Rothschild's bitch. That is
Hmm.
who Trump is. And if anybody is unsure about that, follow the money, trace where his bailouts came from, do some research, and you'll see that just like every other world leader, he's a puppet. They're controlled by the think tanks, the World Economic Forums and Trilateral Commission, and so on. But ultimately, sat at the top of the pyramid of power are the Rothschilds and the other bloodline families. So the idea with Iran is to push us into 15-minute cities. So they stage a war, and frankly, if anyone does some digging, they'll see that it actually in the Middle East, what we're seeing in the Middle East is Israel firing weapons
Yeah.
into the Middle East. It's not the other way around. Um, but what they want, and people will say, well, it's to do with the banking. The Rothschilds don't own the Bank of Israel, of Iran. It's not to do with that. Of course, they will pick up the bank, but it's fiat currency now that we work with, so it's not real money anymore. They don't need any more money. They can put zeros on a bank balance whenever they want to, just to keep
Yeah.
adding them. So by causing this pretend war in Iran, and don't get me wrong, there are people out there being killed as a direct result of what's going on, but this isn't a proper war. This is staged. We're watching a Hollywood movie play out with real um, extras in it, and it is the extras that are getting killed and harmed and injured. And typically, it seems to be children that are being targeted, incidentally. It's a lot of schools and so on. But anyway, ultimately, it's to do with putting up the cost of oil. Because when you put up the cost of oil, it restricts the movement of people. People will start saying, well, flights have gone up, so I'm not going to go on holiday this year. I'm not going to have that weekend city break that I was taking to Paris. I can't afford to fill my car up as often now, so I'm going to have to reduce the amount of travelling I do. And here, a lot of places in England, Scotland and Wales, we have oil. We don't have connection to the gas main, so we have oil tanks with kerosene that we have to buy in, and that's what powers our heating for our homes. So our boilers are fueled by oil, not gas. I'm the same here because I live in the middle of nowhere. I paid £330 in December, which would be about $400 for 500 litres. It was $700 last week for the same amount.
Oh my goodness.
So now I'm going to, I mean, fortunately, we're okay, but there are going to be people out there that are going to say we're going to have to turn the heating off.
Yep.
We can't afford to have a bath. You know, there are going to be people that have to make some big decisions. So it's going to affect people dramatically. The cost of fuel's gone up across the world. They're going to restrict travel. But the other clever part of it is they'll be able to put up the price of everything because they'll say it now costs more to transport it. So whether it's a loaf of bread or the latest iPhone, they'll say, well, it costs more to ship these products now because of the fuel hike. So people will find themselves in a position where they're going to have to sell their house because mortgage rates are going to go up. The cost of living is going to go through the roof. People will sell their home and then rent just to make ends meet. And this is Agenda 2030. And there will be people that, as a direct result of this, end their lives. We've seen it. You know, when people hit a wall, you know, sometimes the only option in their mind left to them is that they can't carry on and they won't carry on. So we will see that. And of course, when people take the decision to eat cheaper food because they haven't got the money, they'll turn to heavily processed food, and then that will increase the risk of diseases, whether it's cancer or heart disease or dementia or Alzheimer's. We'll see that increase as well, and then we'll see fertility problems as a direct result of those. Like somebody who eats McDonald's every day is going to find it harder to conceive than someone who doesn't, for example. So it all ties together. Restrict our movement, put us on our knees financially, and put us into a position where we can no longer afford really to leave our home. We've got to turn our heating off in winter when it gets really cold this coming year, and we're going to have to start eating really cheap food, or we're going to starve to bloody death. And then they'll have a pandemic, and we're going to take a vaccination for it, and they'll crank the 5G masts up, and they'll finish off as many people as they can.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Is there anything we can do, Guy?
Tell everyone.
Okay. And start getting prepared, get seeds, start growing your own
Yeah,
food, get independent.
absolutely, absolutely. And you'll notice that most fruit now comes without seeds, what they call the Formula One seed. You can only, and if it does have a seed, it will only work once. You can't
Hmm.
repeatedly grow from that seed. So
Wicked, wicked, wicked. Yeah.
yeah, the best advice I can give, and this is only advice, this is only an opinion of mine. I'm not telling people they should do this. If you are given a decision between paying a bill to a government agency or putting food on your table and heating your home, make the right decision. They don't deserve a penny. Yes, you might get threatening letters. Yes, they might even send someone to your door. Put food on your table before you give the government a penny. So if you pay your own tax, stop. Just say, I can't afford to pay you anymore because of what you have done. I cannot afford to pay you. I'm not going to pay the rates, the tax, whatever it is. Look at that. Look into your straw man. You know, you don't have to pay your mortgage back. You don't have to pay loans back. There are ways round this. They're not communicating with you. They're communicating with a dead fiction. But do your homework. Don't just decide you're not going to pay for something. But put food on your table and turn your heating up as high as you like. Do that before you give the government a penny. Um, and play them at their own game. If they're going to make things harder for us, well, we'll do the same for you because this is you that have caused this. So, for example, this year, I don't pay for water. I don't pay for a license to watch television, and this year I will stop paying the tax locally to the local government for having my street cleaned and my road maintained and my rubbish collected. I will stop paying that. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again because they're not communicating with me. They're communicating with somebody in full caps. Um, so fight back and also do the right thing with food. You get more nutrients from a proper steak and some real vegetables and fruit than you will from heavily processed or supermarket food. So you might find that a small steak that costs you $10 from a butcher might seem really expensive compared to the $5 one from the supermarket, but you won't need to eat anywhere near as much of it because of the nutritional value in real food. So it's a false economy to buy cheap food. Look at what you're eating. And if you're going to snack, forget the crisps and chocolate and stuff. Get some fruit and some nuts. So I think you've got to look at what you're eating and where you're getting it from. And I think you've got to put yourself first before your bank, your government, or your credit card company. They can all swivel. They've had enough money out of us. And if you understand how the straw man works, then you'll understand that you don't owe them a penny anyway. It's not even you they're writing to.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
and tell the world, tell everyone, don't comply. Turn the news off. Don't buy the newspapers. Stop watching television. Don't play the game because if you're not constantly subjected to their propaganda, you'll be a lot happier and your health will improve mentally and physically because it's not hitting you. And when you talk about it like we are now, the light at the end of the tunnel is we are having this conversation and we are saying to the
Yeah.
system,
Truth.
yeah, we're not
Yeah.
we're not interested.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, Donald Rothschild, whoever you are,
Yeah.
couldn't care less. Not interested. We're
Yeah.
done with you. We're done with your friends. We're not interested in any of it anymore. We're just going to do our own thing, and we're going to put ourselves before anybody that we owe money to, unless it's friend or family.
Yeah.
They can all take a hike.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome advice. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
Start talking to your friends and your neighbors, get organized, get back to nature and yeah, we're gonna be okay, but it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, bumpy ride.
Yeah.
We'll lose a few along the way. We'll lose a
Yeah.
lot of people along the way,
Yeah.
but the ones that are prepared to stand up and resist, we're going to get through this, and we will see the end of these parasites.
Yes. Thank you so much. And before we say goodbye, do you have anything coming up that you want people to know about?
Um, No, I can't think of it. Well, I'm always doing something.
Yeah.
I'm writing. I'm still writing a couple of books at the moment, but they won't be out till later in the year. My first book's being made into a documentary.
Oh, awesome.
That'll be out later in the year. They start filming in April. But no, not really. I try and put anything I'm doing on my social media feed, and anyone that wants to follow me or learn more about my work, the best place to find me is actually through my website because that's where all the links are. They
Okay.
can read about my books, and there are blogs on there that contain information that I cannot put on social media. So my
Okay.
website is the best place to find out what I'm up to and a bit more about my work.
Awesome. Yes, and I will put the links to your website on and you have a YouTube channel, right? Or
Yeah, and again, the
okay.
link's on there. So kind of
Okay.
everything online really is Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. I
Okay.
mean, I've named everything after my first book, but
Yeah.
the website is the Tartarian Empire dot
Okay.
co dot uk. And obviously, I'm Guy Anderson on Facebook, but my group's Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. My Instagram is,
Okay.
and my YouTube channel too. But links to all of that are on my website.
Okay. All right. Well, the link to his website will be in the show notes, everybody. So nice and easy, just go click on it. All right. Thank you so, so much. I appreciate you coming on. I'm grateful for all the
It's
work
a
you're
pleasure.
doing. Guy Anderson, you're amazing. And I hope to have you back on in the future when your next books come out.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Bye, everyone. Oops, where's my end? Bye.
Bye.